Lakewood City Council study session, City of Lakewood, Colorado, on October 21st, 2019 at 7 p.m. in council chambers. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Paul.
Here.
Roybal.
Here.
Gutwein. Here. Skilling. Here. LeBure.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Vincent.
Here.
Vita.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Franks.
Here.
Harrison.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to our study session, and we'll get started right away with item 3. That is going to be the state of our courts. And I have Scott Hefty as who's going to kick it off, but it looks like Judge Stavig is going to kick it off. Good evening. Welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Paul, and looks like we're all set to start. So thank you, Mayor Powell, and good evening, Council, and thank you to Lakewood staff and community as well. And talk more directly into this. Thank you. All right. First of all, I want to express my great thanks to all of you for your support and your encouragement. I have very much appreciated that while you understand that what we do is really handle all the tickets written by the Lakewood Police and code enforcement and animal control, that you really do encourage us to do what we can to help the community and help make people's lives better, help people find happier, better ways to live their lives. And I've so appreciated your support with that. So we try to address the root causes of criminal behavior, and we continue to be a leader among the municipal courts in Colorado with innovative programs and approaches. And I really do thank you, because I think you've given us the support and the ability to do that. I want to introduce my colleagues who have come with me tonight. And first of all, Judge Dan Ramsey, who has been with the Lakewood Municipal Court for 29 years. Judge Corinne Flanagan, who has been with us for 5 years. Chief Marshal Mark Diedel, who has been with the court for 9.5 years. He was with the Lakewood Police Department for 25 years, as you remember. We have our Chief Court Operations Manager, Tammy Smith, who's been with the court for 26 years, and then Chief Probation Officer Jennifer Zublik, who's been with the court for 13 years, 2 years as Chief Probation Officer, and then 11 years as a probation officer and 1 year as an intern. She took Scott Hefty's place. Scott, unfortunately, is home and under the weather, and I'm sure he's watching us, and we miss you, Scott, and wish that you were here with us, but he'll be fine. Our really big news is the retirement of Judge Dan Ramsey. And he announced his retirement on Friday after 29 years with the city. He has been a very dedicated and loyal colleague. He's never lost focus. He's always really emphasized justice and fairness. He's always had a very calm and reflective demeanor. He listens to every person who appears in front of him, and he never runs out of compassion for the offenders that appear there. I will very much miss his steady and very kind leadership. He's had a great deal of concern for the community, both in public safety, but also in the health and well-being of our offenders and our staff, for that matter. I've really appreciated his help in just managing the court. I'm losing a friend and colleague who never misses a chance to sing happy birthday, comes to every major event that staff has, and I'm very happy that he will stay on and be one of our relief judges, so we're not losing him entirely. He'll be coming in when we need him. But it's a momentous change after 29 years with the court, and I certainly want to thank him. He's had an outstanding career, so thank you. And what will happen now is that this is going to be turned over to you. And so it's City Council who will ultimately decide who takes Judge Ramsey's place. There is a Judicial Review Commission, And this is a group of people who have had this title for 11 years. They haven't met since they appointed me. Their two jobs are basically to appoint judges and then also to deal with any complaints that we've had. And I'm pleased to say we've never had a complaint, but that also means that they haven't had any work. And so what they do is that they'll meet, and they're led by Chief Judge of the District Court in Jefferson County, Phil McNulty. And so he's the one that basically runs the first part of this, the getting out the applications and then reviewing those. They will interview all the candidates, and then they will pick 3 candidates and we'll send them to you, City Council, who will vote and ultimately decide on a replacement for Judge Ramsey. The other new announcements, we've actually had a lot of changes among the judges. I'm absolutely thrilled with the 5 new judges that we've hired. We were really needing more coverage, and we did have 3 that left this year. But I found it almost hard to believe the people that applied and the people that we got lucky enough to appoint. So our 5 new judges, and these are the part-time fill-in judges, so they actually only get paid by the hour, and they come in and work, and they come in and just when we need some extra help. But we hired Amanda Balehash. She's been with the Boulder Public Defender's Office since 2006. She was appointed the presiding judge at the North Glen Municipal Court, and then also has been appointed as a relief judge in the Westminster Municipal Court. And so she's in those 2 courts, and it seemed only appropriate to also bring her on in Lakewood when we need her. Susan Fish has been a Jefferson County judge since 2008. And just retired in June. She also worked for many years in the State Public Defender's Office, and if I have to admit, we often had cases against each other back when I was doing that kind of work also. And so it's to her credit that she's that we thought so much of each other, even being on opposite sides, that she was willing to come work with me, and I was thrilled to get her to work with. So she brings great experience. And then we've got Frederick Michael Goodby, who's been an Adams County District Court judge since 2008, and he was recently appointed the presiding judge in Golden. He has had so many different hats. He was the elected DA in the 5th Judicial District after working as a DA in that office and some other offices in the state. And then he also served, did time, it sounds like he went to jail, but at the Attorney General's office. I think he was one of the top management at the Attorney General's office for a while. And then worked at the Adams County DA's office, but like I said, has been a district court judge in Adams County and just recently retired there, so we're thrilled to have him. Marcus Ivey has been a magistrate for the city of Aurora since 2016. He's also worked in criminal defense. He worked at the State Public Defender's Office. He's the president of the Board of Education for the Aurora Public Schools, so he brings a totally different kind of experience to our bench. And then Carolyn Moore has been a Boulder County judge since 2011, and just retired in January, and she has also worked as a DA in Jefferson County and Boulder County, and we're thrilled to have her as well. So I'm just stunned at the decades of criminal experience that we're suddenly adding to our bench, and I'm just really pleased that they see Lakewood as such a good place to work. I think it's very flattering to the city that these really high-powered judges are coming to be municipal judges with us. So I'm really excited about that. We are sad to lose several judges. Judge Roy Olson, who was a long-term county court judge in Jefferson County and started right after I started. He was one of my very first hires, and he just said, I'm just ready to retire. So he retired this year. And then Judge Rob Lockery, And you'll remember that he's been off and on with going with the State Department to Afghanistan and most recently Bangladesh. And so he's taken a few leave of absences. He's finally decided to stay in Colorado. And I thought we were going to get him more here, but then he applied for the district court in Jefferson County and did get that position. So he's now serving there. And then Judge Kristen Wheeler was appointed as a district court magistrate in Adams County. And so we're very proud of both of them and very proud that it does appear that the Lakewood Municipal Court seems to be a good training ground or breeding ground for these more elevated, I'm not going to say more important, but court positions, certainly the district court and county court around the state. So I'm finding that all very exciting. This year has been a little different from most of our years, so I feel like this is going to be a little bit different presentation. We've had a pretty big challenge, and that is a new computer system, and we have gone paperless. And so the old system was on its last legs. I think that IT was just really happy that it stayed working until we got the new system going. But it has certainly been a challenge. I do want to give some very special recognition to our Chief Court Operating Officer, Tammy Smith, who was involved in researching all the different systems, and she is the one that absolutely knows everything about it. It's been a full-time job for Tammy to get this going, get everybody trained. She's really been the liaison with IT, and I do want to really thank Lakewood's IT department. They've been very cooperative too. Olga Kudzmi probably needs special recognition too, but Tammy's really had two full-time jobs, because this has easily been almost more than a full-time job on top of managing the Violations Bureau. And then she did get a new title, and she's the Chief Operations Manager rather than simply the manager of the Violations Bureau. And that's in recognition of the fact that her management and her training and work really involves the entire office. But she's done just an amazing job with, I can't even imagine the thousands of hours that she's put in getting this system going. It's, like I said, it's been challenging. We finally did go live in April 2019. We were ready to go live 3 times, and at the last minute, and I'm so grateful to Tammy and to Olga and the others who really were able to realize that it wasn't just quite right. And I don't know if you've had experience with new computers, but they tend to have bugs and things that you don't really know until you start using them. And so luckily, they caught it several times, so that when we finally did go live in April, it was okay. I mean, it was working pretty well, and they made sure that the financials in particular were working. The staff has just been amazing. So on top of their ordinary full-time jobs, they've had to learn this new system. And, for the judges and the court staff, it really means that absolutely everything is on the computer. So we're looking at the police reports and the criminal histories, and then we have to type in on the docket sheets and do everything on the computer now. And this happened to coincide, I'm not sure if it's good or bad. It did mean that we had a lot of empathy for each other, but with Niche coming on with the police department. And so the two systems have been trying to talk to each other and connect, and it's been challenging, and I'm pleased to say that there are no major disasters or big mistakes. That everything, it may have slowed down quite a bit, but everything did seem to go along okay. Nothing really fell through the cracks, but what it does mean is that we're all getting used to trying to be on the computer and remember that our purpose is really to talk to people. And we're all trying to remind ourselves that we need to connect with those defendants that are in our courtroom, and we need to make sure that they understand what we're trying to talk to them about and that we're really listening. And I have to admit, the first few weeks of doing this, I felt like I was on the computer, and I did have one or few defendants say, "Are you listening to me?" It's just, yes, we need to really make sure we remember what we're there for. But we're getting better at that. I'm told that it's going to get faster, and IT works so hard. We cheer whenever we reduce a process by even one click, because it saves time. And there are some very good features. We have public portals now on the computer, so that some traffic and parking cases can just be paid for online, and that makes it a lot easier for people. The collections can be people can pay to get themselves out of collections online for most of the traffic and parking. We're probably going to be able to have people make all their payments online eventually, but they're still doing the software for that. They can check to see if they have an active warrant, which is good, because then they can come in instead of being arrested for it. And we can have electronic filings from attorneys as well. I won't try to beat the dead horse too much, but the challenge that the staff faced was just incredible. We had 20,000, actually it was well over 20,000 paper files that had to be put into the system, and our old system and our new system didn't talk to each other, and so those had to be scanned by hand, which meant breaking them down, putting them in the computer, uploading the file, naming the file, and then moving the file to another computer, and then getting it all organized that way. So that was over 20,000 cases, and I have to really give credit for my managers. I mean, they really divided up the work, and we tried to have little parties here and there and celebrations and rewards, and I have to say morale was really pretty good. I mean, everybody was just trying to go as fast as they could and work as hard as they could, and when somebody was starting to feel down about it, which there was good reason for it, it seemed that the others were there to really pick them up. So I'm just really appreciate the managers and how they handled all of this. It's still a little slower in court, and we're, like I said, we're getting used to it, and I think that this will be better. And we're hoping that soon we can really get back to just focusing on crime prevention and the kinds of things that we really like to be doing, and that's coming slowly. We're also really trying to make sure that people don't get too isolated in the court. I think one of my big concerns right now is that people don't have to talk to each other, and they don't have to walk around with files, and so it's trying to encourage people to still do some, have conversations and get up and walk and not sit at their desks for 8 hours a day. And so we're trying to be creative to make sure that we keep our morale up and keep a happy place. So like I said, we're happy to be able to start focusing again on the crimes, the municipal crimes in the city. I was a little surprised that the numbers stayed as high as they were. This is just a projection. Actually, I need to give you a really, really big caveat with all of the numbers that I'm giving you tonight. That's part of the software that they haven't quite gotten down yet. So this was, I'm not even going to try to explain, but it's very unlikely to be entirely accurate. I'm hoping that next year, and I'm hoping even next spring, that I'll be able to come and say, we know these numbers are right, and this is how we got them. But the computer wasn't cooperating, and we got enough different results, depending on which buttons you push, that I'm not completely confident. We think it's right around 17,366, and which is up a little from last year, and that's what surprised me a little bit, because I know with the police department computer that they had to learn how to use that before they could really get summons issued. So, but I see numbers going up. mainly because the police department has just hired a lot of new patrol agents, as you know, and they're all getting trained. And so I think that, and they're all getting used to the system. So I think these probably will be rising. Part of summonses is if you have the traffic team out, they're going to be catching the people who are speeding. And so it's not just that crime is going up when we look at these increases in numbers, it's that they're out actually patrolling and writing tickets. As you can see, most of what we do, the blue number up there are the traffic summonses. And that's both the offenses, which we see in court, and then also the infractions, and those are the mail-in. So that's the vast majority of what we see. Parking tickets are also mail-in. Those are the green ones. The cases that we spend all of our time on are really the penal cases, the red, and then the juvenile penal cases. And there's 681 juvenile cases, again, and we've got 4,048 adult penal cases. That includes 192 domestic violence cases. So, and actually those numbers I'm pretty confident of, the domestic violence numbers we're pretty sure of. It looks like the projected, looking at how things have gone for the first 3 quarters of the year, so we should have about 93 trials to the court and 27 jury trials. Those are all-day trials that we do on Fridays. That's when we see all of your citizens. And then over 7,000 court arraignments, the prisoner video hearings and public defender hearings. Again, those are significant. This is, like I said, what we really do spend our time on. The hearing numbers have gone up a little bit. A lot of cases take more than one hearing. A lot of the traffic and less serious cases we can handle just in one. But the number of hearings that we spend our time on really shows how busy the court is, because those are the ones that we're spending time in court. With the 5,000 and some arrest warrants, those end up being bond hearings once somebody's arrested, or if they just show up to court on their own, then they're failure to appear hearings. And this is what those warrants cause the almost 4,000 prisoner hearings that we see. The fines and costs have stayed fairly steady. And again, Tammy Smith manages the Violations Bureau. They touch every single summons, and they're responsible for every single fine that's paid. And that should get easier as we go along. We are, the fines and costs do depend on the number of summonses, and I do want to let you know that we just in the last couple of months have decided to change the way that we give traffic fines. And this is in response to a lot of the fatalities that we're seeing, and then the just crazy number of really fast drivers on 6th Avenue. And I don't know how much you all hear about it, but we've been stunned to see how many people are driving even over 100 miles an hour on 6th Avenue. And so after looking at the things that we could possibly do, it seemed that we should raise those fines. And actually what we're doing is we're going to be fining people on their original charge, as well as taking into account once it gets to be, frankly, lethal. I mean, if there's an accident at that kind of speed, somebody's going to die. And so all of the fines are going to be going up with the traffic cases, and the fines on those high ones, they've been high. We've always hit them pretty hard, but we're just encouraging all the judges to really make sure that that is going to discourage people from driving so fast or driving so recklessly. Well, the way that we're going to be structuring it is in line with what quite a few of the jurisdictions do. So it's like I said, it's looking at the original charge as opposed to any plea bargain. And so it's in line with what other courts do. So I feel very comfortable that we're doing this to promote safety and lawful behavior, and that this isn't just a revenue raising kind of maneuver. It really is to address public safety. So though I'm sure if there's a little more money in the coffers, that doesn't make people unhappy, but that's not our intention. It really is to stop the bad driving. Actually, I'm going to wait on that. We'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing in the court. We do have some new exciting things going on with the courts and with the criminal law, even despite having the new computer system. Jennifer Zublik, our probation manager, and one of our POs, the probation officers, Preston Wilhite, applied for a grant with Community First Foundation, and we just learned last week that we got that grant, and it's $80,000. It's called MOST, which is the Municipal Opioid Streamlined to Treatment Program. And so it's a special program that's going to be helping with opioid addiction. And we're just absolutely thrilled to get this money from them. And it really, just doing the grant helped us to research and look at what this program needed to be. And so it's, we're basically going to be looking at 30 offenders at any given time. If someone isn't working out, we can fill somebody with their fill that spot with somebody else. It needs to be somebody who doesn't have the finances to pay for treatment, who's disclosing that they are addicted and that they do have a problem. They want to get treatment, and then we'll be looking at their criminal history. We're going to give priority to somebody who's actually committing crimes and causing problems in the criminal justice system. So sadly, I'm afraid we're going to be able to fill that up pretty quickly, but we're really excited to have that money. The grant is going to pay for the assessments and treatment, the random UAs, mental health assessments and treatment, and they're willing to pay for bus passes so that they can get to the treatment, which unbelievably is often the big critical problem for a lot of these offenders. They don't have any way to get around. They are requiring us to have a very measurable idea of success. So after 1 year, they said that at least 25% of our clients, or 8 people, must have completed treatment, must prove that they're sober with UAs. They have to have a job. They have to have insurance, and they must successfully complete probation or diversion. So it's, I hope I'm giving you great news that we met that goal next year, and I think that's what may allow us to get more funding if we're able to meet that. So we're certainly optimistic at this point. The domestic violence cases are still our highest priority. Like I said, we have 192 cases projected for 2019. And they, as you know, they're our highest priority because they have the highest potential for violent and possibly lethal outcomes. And so we very strictly follow the DVOMB standards. That's the Domestic Violence Offender Management Board standards. And again, those are based on very well-researched principles. We fast-track those cases, meaning that once they're arrested, we get them in the next day. We get trials set almost immediately. That really assists in getting the victim cooperation that can sometimes wane if cases drag on too long. And we have very heavy emphasis once there is a conviction on substance abuse and mental health treatment, as well as domestic violence treatment. The big thing that we do that I think is a little bit different from the county is we don't give up on them. The way we look at this group of offenders is that they're living here typically. I mean, they usually are Lakewood residents, and they often relapse if drugs or alcohol are the problem. They often have difficulties just getting motivated to get all this done. And so we give them a lot of smaller consequences, a little bit of time in jail or whatever appears to be appropriate, and really stay with them until they get sober and clean and they finish their domestic violence treatment. It's really surprising how many defendants tell me as they're coming to the end of their treatment time and their end of their probation that they think that this has been great. I've had several people say they think everybody ought to be in domestic violence treatment because it's such good life lessons that they end up learning. And so I'm feeling really good about our treatment providers, and the vast majority of them do succeed. Some of them take a few more years than others, but we figure it doesn't help just to close the case and punish them. So we really do stick with them, and that's why our probation officers are often quite busy just maintaining those cases, sometimes for years. Sometimes people finish it quickly and on time, but they can tend to be pretty tough clients. We're also just starting with a risk assessment tool, and again, Jennifer Zublik, our Chief Probation Officer, has been researching different risk assessment tools for adults. And I think you all probably remember that I've shown you a lot and talked a lot about the risk assessment tools for juveniles, which we've relied on very heavily. And I'm actually not going to get into that much again because I've talked to you about that a lot. But we're looking for the same kind of tool that we can use for adults so that we can better focus on what they need and decide who is the more dangerous amongst our offenders. Probation has a good amount of our offenders, but they really focus on the domestic violence. And so it is the judges and more so the city attorneys who supervise most of our adult offenders. And so we really try to look and see what was involved in the crime. Sometimes it's very obvious when they're drunk and violent or whatever. I mean, sometimes we can get a pretty good idea of what the issues are. But the assessment tool will give us more than just that idea. And then the city attorneys, I do want to give them special thanks too, because not every city attorney's office does this kind of monitoring. Not every city attorney's office takes such responsibility for cases after they've pled guilty and after they've been sentenced. But our city attorney's office make sure that they're going to their classes, their drug and alcohol, anger management, cognitive classes, their theft classes. They get the UA results. They make sure they run their criminal histories to make sure there aren't any new offenses. And so we do get supervision and make changes with people who are not on probation. In fact, that really is the majority of our cases. Some people have such minor crimes that they might just get a fine or get some community service, but if it looks like there's something to address, we do that, and most often, like I said, it's the city attorneys who are looking at those. I did just get, and again, I can feel confident about these numbers because one of our marshals, one of Chief Dietl's marshals, got these together for me just today. And so far in 2019, we have 332 homeless people who've received tickets in Lakewood, and they have received amongst them 656 tickets. And so as we're getting used to the computer, I have to say this is one of my top priorities, and I've been in conversations and we've had a lot of meetings and stakeholder meetings. We've been meeting with the Lakewood Police, the CAT team, and trying to really figure out how the courts can support what the police are doing and how the courts can try to intervene and provide resources. We have a lot of that going on already. I mean, whenever somebody is homeless, we've got a whole packet of resources for them. We try to follow up and see if they need the treatment. and just try to figure out what it is that's causing the homeless situation. But that is going to be a big focus, and I think I'm hoping that I can come and tell you we've got this great program or several programs, because I know it's not one size fits all, but I'm hoping that next year we'll have really moved on that, and that's been a lot of effort on the part of the marshals in particular in just keeping track of those and keeping those conversations going. Our Veterans Court is still running well, and again, we have our veteran from the Vietnam War, the Chief Judge Steve Munsinger, who was the Chief Judge in District Court, and he still runs the vet court. And then Scott Hefty, my court administrator, of course, told me that he didn't even want to be court administrator unless he could keep vet courts. He's just so devoted to that, and sort of course, he'd keep that. And then they have Audrey Smith as the probation officer who works with them. They have been working on sobriety, mental health, reintegrating them into the community. I think in past years we've talked a lot about the homeless vets, and that has been a big push, is to try to get homes, and we've done really well in trying to get them to a place where they're stable and working and getting homes. It's changed a little this year. We did house 3 homeless veterans this year. But right now, 7 out of our 9 veterans are charged with domestic violence. And so we're finding that it's, I don't know why, but it's just a different group of people. And so we've got a bit of a different focus now. It's a group that I think, we use weekly mental health treatment. They meet every other week. They get a lot of supervision, a lot of contact, a lot of hand holding. One in particular, one veteran that I wanted to tell you about, just before being placed on vet court for domestic violence, he'd tried to kill himself, commit suicide 6 times in the past 12 months. And so he was just seriously high risk, mostly to himself. They got him on vet court. He started mental health treatment, started his domestic violence treatment. They found him housing. They got him connected with that. He got a job. He got into some pro-social activities, and he ended up completing Veterans Court after the original 1-year sentence. So it just, it's amazing sometimes to see what that structure and support can really do for somebody. And so it's just been a great success. And we hope that somebody like that can go out and pass it on to other veterans as well. We had our 7th annual West Metro Veterans Fair this year, and that was just a great success. Each year they get bigger, and that's just been very fun, and appreciate the Councilman Roybal and others, Mayor Paul, who've all been involved in this. And yeah, I know that Councilman Johnson comes, and so it's been very nice to have all of your support for that. We did host the annual Colorado Veterans Treatment Court Conference, which is kind of funny because most of them are district courts. There are only a couple of municipal courts that have veteran treatment courts, but we hosted that a few weeks ago, and that went well. As far as the probation numbers, again, we had a little over 1,000 cases referred in 2019, or that we project to be referred in 2019. We have roughly 80% success rate of people who successfully complete probation or diversion. It doesn't mean that the 20% are out committing heinous crimes necessarily. It just means they didn't follow through what they were supposed to. We do give them lots of chances too, even the ones that aren't on DV, but at some point we tend to give them consequences and have to close unsuccessfully. But about 80% follow through and really do what they're supposed to do and stay out of trouble. And I think that's the big thing. They don't commit any more offenses. Of the 20%, a lot of the ones that fail end up getting charged in county or district court, and so they move on, they graduate to other levels of court. We do have a juvenile program that I think I mentioned to you last year, because it just started last year, and that's the YES program, and that's the Youth Enrichment Support Program. And this is a fun one because it's the Lakewood Community Centers who partnered with us, so the rec centers basically. And again, Chief Probation Officer Jennifer Zublick, and then Fred Peters, who was a Lakewood police agent and is now in our juvenile division. He was a juvenile agent with the police department. And the two of them had just been talking about how there's a group of our probation kids that just don't have the opportunities to ever try things, and their families just don't give them the ability to try sports or try different activities. And so they thought, well, let's try taking groups of kids to rec centers and playing games with them. And so each week they go and have, I guess it's monthly, yeah, otherwise it'd be a lot of your time. Each month they go and they've had, they'll do the weight room, or they'll go swimming, or they'll go, they actually played basketball one time. In fact, one of the girls that had never played basketball before thought it was so much fun that she went to her high school and tried out for the high school team, and she actually made it. So she's now on the high school basketball team, which is fun. But we've had 43 kids doing that so far, and we're kind of learning as we go what's effective. They actually played pickleball one week too, which was a new one. But it seems to just give kids another idea of what they can do. And so we're just trying to throw some positive sorts of experiences in there too. We still work hard with our LEAP kids. Those are the kids that have diagnosed behavioral health issues. And we're really pleased that last year we were made part of the Court Support Jeffco. And so they're giving us, I think this year it was $1,693. And that's to help with the treatment that the kids can't pay for. UAs are something that they often can't pay for, and just giving positive incentives, because with that group of kids, we often do give them, if they do really well in a month, we want to give them, a $5 little gift certificate or something. And the positive incentives almost seem to have more of an effect than the negative ones. Some of these kids get so much negative, so when they get a treat, it makes them want to get another one the next time, and they like the praise and they like the rewards. So to get that from Court Support Jeffco, and that, if you're not familiar with that, that's the group that basically gives monetary support to all the special treatment courts, and again, usually in the district court and county court. We have, we work very closely again with the Lakewood Police. They're involved with the LEAP program, and it's a collaborative effort to try to give just a lot of supervision to each of these kids that do have fairly significant issues. Their crimes tend to not be terribly serious, but the diagnosis and behavior tells us that they really do need an awful lot of attention. And so I feel that it's an important program just because it's the most intensive supervision we really do. And with teachers and therapists and everybody collaborating and making sure that we're all on the same page with these kids. And then if they have to be in the mental health treatment, and we really work closely with those treatment providers. Chief Mark Dietl is still on the board with the Jefferson Center of Mental Health, so he's, our relationships with those different providers are very close. And then, of course, we have the assessment for substance abuse, and making sure that that's not part of it. Our graffiti cleanup and community service, we still have Shane Littleton, and I know a lot of you know Shane. He responds to a lot of city requests. I think he had his kids clean up or respond to 78 city requests this year. He helped them do 468 hours, and there were 275 different kids that went through his program. And so he basically takes them out in a van and gets them working. They've done trash pickup at Bear Creek and Lakewood high schools, at the parks. They do graffiti cleanup. In fact, it's almost 900 and over 930 surfaces that were cleaned this year, or projected to be cleaned, I think it is. And he also just tries to mentor them and give them a pretty positive experience while they're doing that. Oh, and 26 shopping carts were taken back to where they belong as well. So we still have, I think I've talked a lot to all of you about the various effective programs that we have. I'm not going to get into details about the Girls Circle program, our Teen Court program, our Yet Education program, the fact that we really do monitor their school portals so we could see if they're going to school every day and their grades. And I think we're just doing good work with our juvenile probations. And I do want to thank you again for the money that you have allowed us for UAs and for our work programs. So it's taken that excuse away, because it's coming down to those are the things that we really can require them to do. And since you all gave us some funding, we can keep track of who really is sober and don't have to send them out to get a job. And also with the work program too, that's just been very successful. So thank you. Certainly appreciate that. Like I said, we've had a number of challenges this year on top of the computer system. This is what this slide is actually about. The Lakewood, the Jefferson County Jail is having serious budget problems, and I think all of you are well aware of the county's issues with that. In May, they told us, meaning some of the jail officials, notified us that the Lakewood Municipal Court was going to have to dramatically reduce its beds, if not eliminate them, because they saw us as the bottom of the totem pole. So I've been to a lot of meetings, and I've been talking to an awful lot of people, and I think that everybody is persuaded at this point that we have to have some jail beds. I mean, we usually don't give jail. We try to be so creative to have positive interventions, but if you don't have that ultimate bad thing that could happen if you don't follow a court order, they're going to ignore the court orders. And the other thing that I've really been impressing upon them is that we have about 5,000 to 6,000 criminal cases a year. Those aren't people who are just going away. If we're not able to intervene effectively, and I really do think the possibility of jail is the only way we can intervene effectively, or that we're able to, then the Lakewood police agents will start filing all those cases in Jefferson County. They're the same people that will go to jail there as they will here. I think we actually work much harder in trying to find alternatives, and so I have really argued that their jail bed space is going to get even worse if they try to take away our criminal cases, because I think we work awfully hard to find alternatives. So they haven't mentioned it as much lately. I know they're talking about dramatically reducing jail bed space. I also know, just reading in the Post today, that there's more discussion, and I'm aware of the agreement of the early release program. We actually, I don't remember if it was my predecessor, but the judges have signed that, and I've signed one of those as well. So that does, Lakewood is under that agreement as well, and it's basically that we can designate certain prisoners who cannot be released because they're just too dangerous. But if the jail gets full, we've agreed that they can go through and based on all kinds of assessment as to community safety, et cetera, we're allowing them to release at 50% of their sentence. So I think that we're going to keep arguing. I may need your help at some point if it starts looking like we're going to lose our ability to follow through. And so I'll certainly keep you posted on this. Because the follow through with sentences, because I really do think that that's absolutely necessary for being able to conduct business. But as I said, lately it's just been that we all need to work hard to keep our jail numbers down. We have done a lot to get our numbers down. In fact, I've been very proud of the work we've done. Chief Deedle and his marshals have been keeping very close track of where our prisoners are when they get arrested in other parts of the state. We look at who's dangerous, who's not. We transport people straight to court. In fact, that happens almost every day instead of taking them to the Jefferson County Jail. And we try to handle cases right away. An awful lot of the people in the jail aren't there because they're dangerous. They're there because they don't come to court and they fail to appear. And so if we can just get them into court, take care of the case, then they don't need to take up a bed. So we're doing more plea bargains by mail when people are, particularly in the Department of Corrections or in other jails, we'll try to just take care of their cases by mail. We're doing more plea bargaining or actually handling cases over the telephone, speakerphone, open court, and just handling cases before we get them to the jail. And I'm actually very proud of what we've done just in the last 6 months or so. We were running about somewhere between 20 and 30 cases, or 20 and 30 inmates back in April. And that's when the sheriff really put his foot down and said, we've got to do something about it. We decided that we'd show him that with a lot of really intense management. And like I said, the marshals have worked awfully hard and driven around the state a lot to do this. But we're down to, you can see it's 10 is a very typical number. And I think that's part of the reason that the sheriffs realized that, no, we're really working to make this happen. And you can see if we only have 10 inmates in there, those are the ones that really need to be there. And so I think that I think they've appreciated our efforts on all of this. I'm hoping that protects us a little bit. And it's 10 out of, what do they have, 1,200 beds out there? If we're only using 10, it seems like that's well worth our time. Just a couple more. The challenges of the jail delay bill. Again, the marshals have had to work hard to make sure that nobody sits in any jail for more than 2 days without being advised, and they've done a great job keeping track of all that. I don't think we've had anybody released because of the jail delay bill. We just have worked hard to control that. We are still very involved with the CMJA, the Colorado Municipal Judges Association board. As you know, I was president for a while and on that board, and now Judge Flanagan is on that board. And we're still very active in trying to make sure that we keep track of the bills that are really going to cost the city money. And that's been a big issue in the past few years, as you know. I mean, the public defender costs after the bill that required the public defenders to be at every single hearing were really excessive, though the legislature did pass a bill that allowed us to get grant money for paying for those, and Scott Hefty has done an excellent job keeping up with applying for those grants. And so we've gotten reimbursed for over $26,000 in public defender payments. And so that has really softened the blow for that quite a bit. We also started a legislative action committee, and Judge Flanagan is the de facto leader of that. She's the one that's been dealing with the legislatures, and then every week she sends out items on the listserv basically telling us what's coming, what they're doing about it, and has just really taken a great leadership role in trying to make sure that we don't have anything that's going to really make it hard to enforce laws. the Colorado Municipal League. The Judge Kristen Wheeler was the Lakewood judge who just left to go to Adams County. She was the CMJA representative, and now it's yet another Lakewood judge who's going to be the new representative, and that's Judge Katie Kurtz, also Lakewood. So we kind of have all these leadership roles, and I'm pleased that Lakewood is such a leader with all of this. Finally, and we are getting close to the end of these, but we've got an important committee, and this is Judge Flanagan's committee. She's one of the leading members, though also Mark Dietl has been on this committee, and it's the committee studying disproportionate minority overrepresentation. And I think I've mentioned this to you before. Since Lakewood is the largest jurisdiction in Jefferson County, we volunteered to lead the data collection and the research, and this committee's been meeting, really trying to figure out why there's minority overrepresentation. And this is for juveniles. And they have just recently come to the point where they've have some conclusion, and they have some plans. The Lakewood Police Department's been very involved. In fact, they really got started on all of this, and we jumped on with them. So it was impressive that they wanted to look at what was going on with this and try to figure out why. They added an ethnicity field on the police tickets so that we can monitor and just follow and get the data. The Lakewood probation officers have been educating school staff and principals on alternatives to law enforcement. They're trying to decrease law enforcement involvement in the schools, and so they're doing training, and the Lakewood police have been involved with that as well, just how to handle these things so they don't get to the point of needing the ticket. All the Lakewood schools started a Handle with Care program, which is a trauma-informed approach to engage students who are having difficulties outside of school. And so that's a direct result of the work that this committee's been doing. There's a truancy diversion program, and they are working to bring bilingual mental health services for families with Spanish-speaking kids, so that the mental health services can be used in a bilingual fashion. So that has been started. And then the police are also training on implicit bias. They've got in-service trainings and roll call trainings. And anyway, the Lakewood Police Department they've really taken a leadership role in trying to address this issue. So I'm hoping that it'll be very interesting and productive, and hope that this is successful. But they've done some good work. We had a law school intern this summer who did good work. We've had 5 college interns, 8 high school interns this year. It's great for them because they get experience. 6 of our paid staff started as interns, so it's just a great way to get to know people, and it's free for us. So it's been nice to get some of our work done that way. We did another survey where we put the customer experience surveys out so that defendants get those. I'm always a little nervous about this because our defendants don't want to be there, and they're usually not hearing the best things from us, and they're getting their consequences. But we've again gotten really pretty good results. All of the results were over 3.5, except for the time to complete business. And I know that's because of our new computer system. So I'm hoping that once we get more used to that our scores on that will be a little bit higher. So anyway, thank you for your time. I really appreciate your willingness to listen and to find out what's going on with us. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Your Honor. Much appreciated, and thank you to your staff. I think there's going to be a few questions. 2 quick things. I want to just thank you for the creativity that you show and that your team shows for dealing with different populations and really trying to be firm when needed, but try to just get people back to their normal lives and get them back on the road. So I appreciate that. Whether it's veterans, whether it's youth, whether it's folks who are dealing with substance abuse or homelessness. So that's fantastic. quick question. So when the legislature did do some mandates, they set aside some money to assist. Now, was that temporary dollars, or are those dollars still in existence?
That's when I talked about the Scott Hefty going through and keeping track of really by the minute how much time we're spending on the public defenders.
Was that
That's
the
for that, and
26,000?
I think that's the 26,000. But I think it was. See, I thought last year's number was quite a bit better than that. I thought we got around 70,000 last year.
But that
I'm
money,
pretty
is
sure.
that a yearly appropriation, or was that a 2-year appropriation?
So far, it's yearly, but I think, and I may be wrong about that. I think it was 3 years.
Okay.
I'd have to double check on that, and I can get back to you. I'm pretty sure it was 3 years.
Yeah. I just want to make sure, I mean, if we need to be lobbying our folks as well to ensure that those dollars are being backfilled. I know you're all very active. I know our legislative committee is very active as well. So that's good.
And I've appreciated their help on all this.
Yeah.
Too, so.
Do you see anything else? Do you see the continuation, or what does the future hold?
Criminal justice reform is very big this year, and so we've already been told that there will be a number of different items. Some of them look great and we'll welcome them. Some of them look like they could be costly and tie our hands a bit. So we're just going to keep track of it. And again, Judge Flanagan is watching each week as the bills come down. I think the money bond issue will be something that was passed this year. Actually, that I have to say hasn't affected us in any big bad way, because we still get to see the defendants, and we weren't doing a lot of holding homeless people anyway. We really don't use the jail a lot for them. So we're doing okay, and I'm hoping that it'll continue, but we may be asking for some assistance this next year.
Thank you. Mr. Beta?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Judge, first of all, for your report tonight. It was very thorough and complete, and we really appreciate it. I want to tell you that I'm well aware of the situation with county jail, and I'm going to make some comments later in the meeting. I don't know that it's appropriate right now, but I do have some comments I want to make in that regard. And the last thing I want to say, I want to thank you and your staff for the fine job that you do managing our courts. Thank you very much. We don't hear much about the courts. And in many ways, you're sort of the unsung heroes of what's going on in our city. What's good about our city, because we don't hear much about you, but that's probably a good thing, no complaints. But between you and our police department, you are number one in terms of maintaining law and order in our city and, keeping our citizens safe. So I want to thank you for that. Enough said.
Appreciate it.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. Judge Stavik, I'm always in such appreciation of all the ways that you're reaching out to such high-risk populations and all the innovative ways that you're doing to help people. I just have a question on the MOST program that involves opioid addiction. I've really gotten kind of pulled into that topic, and finding too that there's a genetic component to it, which just complicates things even more actually for treatment. The amount of money that you're getting with that grant is great. $80,000 frankly doesn't go very far. Yes. And you're talking about assessment and treatment and bus passes. It sounds like it's more outpatient, or what about inpatient? Talk to me about that. How does that work?
I wish there were more inpatient facilities available, and that is just, it's tragic, really, that we don't have more available for people. This would almost certainly be outpatient. A lot of the offenders are on Medicaid, and so they can get treatment, but again, not inpatient. but they can often get the outpatient, and the $80,000 I think will help to cover some of the costs of the medication and transportation, and so that's how we'll have to spread it out and use it. And then also the UAs and the monitoring and that kind of thing, which actually can be an important part of all of this as well. But no, you're absolutely right. It won't come anywhere near to covering. I mean, the $80,000 could maybe give one person some time in residential treatment, but
Exactly.
yeah. And so this will be to supplement what often Medicaid will do, or if if there are other resources, certainly it'll supplement that as well.
If
And
during the assessment piece of it, it appears that actually outpatient is not going to work for that individual, talk to me. How do you go? What's the next steps? Where do we go with this?
there are a few places. Fort Lyons, which used to be a prison, is now a great, huge residential drug and alcohol treatment facility. And they take 300 and some, I don't want to call them inmates because they're residents. They have a pretty good waiting list. People want to go, and usually it is homeless people that want to go there. But that has been very successful. It's a 2-year program. And since we only have jurisdiction over people for 1 year, we basically have them, you need to do your first year on probation there. Usually they stay and complete the program, but that has been one option. But like I said, there are waiting lists. There are a lot of things springing up, and there are a lot of treatment facilities who are really trying to address these needs, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. So a lot of it, we're hoping with more assessment, we can try to help find the ones that most can use this money and be successful on it. They need to want to make the changes, or else we just can't pay for it. But we have an awful lot of other addicts that we work with and that probation works with, and we've made it a priority to try to help them, whether they have family support, whether they've got other friends, whether we can find facilities. I mean, there are a lot of things that we can try, and we do have a fair amount of success, but it's a struggle. There isn't enough money for treatment. There's no question.
And that's the point. A lot of it is a state level fix with the legislature, and perhaps we as a body, as a city, need to be advocating and lobbying for that kind of inpatient thing. I have learned through New Hope Church, actually, they have follow-up regarding inpatient. They are very closely watching folks that come out of that, and they have a higher level of success. A lot of it depends on the follow-up and keeping people engaged. Mm-hmm. I know, it's a tough issue. Thank you for what you're doing, and I am particularly appreciative of all the time and care and interest that you're putting in with legislative type issues that come up. You're a real asset for our city. Thank you, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skilling.
Thank you, Your Honor, and I'll echo what everyone has said thus far. I wanted to focus in on something that you'd said earlier. You mentioned, and I don't know if everyone at home or in the audience caught it, when you referred to them as clients. These aren't, you don't refer to them as defendants or any of that they're actually clients, which I think reflects the program that you're all about: diversion, treatment, counseling, not just jail time and then the recidivism and everything that comes from that. So I commend you on using that type of language and really treating them as clients. And the slide that's up here now, I think, reflects that as well. These are pretty high marks to give to a client would give to a judge. So I appreciate that. I have kind of a tougher question for you, and it's been said somewhat, but is there an ask from us in this coming year? I know that we're kind of past the budget period, obviously, but if there's a policy ask, you'd mentioned some grants that you received. Is there anything else? Like, we have our planning retreat coming up. Is there something that maybe we could do policy-wise that would help you and make your staff's job easier? And I know that's a really tough one,
That's
but
an exciting question.
and if you want to get back to us, that's fine. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. Thank you again, Your Honor.
No, I appreciate it, and I think, yeah, no, thank you. I think what does frustrate us is the treatment issue. Is just not having enough places, particularly if we have clients who want to get better, and not being able to afford some of that. We're just in initial talks with some people who are considering helping us out with domestic violence treatment. And so I don't want to say too much because we're just starting that conversation. But those aren't as popular as some of certainly the juveniles and some of the other people with addiction problems. But that's a hard population to get funds for, again, because it's not as palatable, I guess, as some of the other crime, or some of the other kinds of crimes that we have. So that's certainly an area. But yeah, I'd love to get back to you if I can get my staff thinking about things. So appreciate it. So.
Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Judge, and all of your staff. They do a wonderful job. When you were talking about the division of beds within Jefferson County, I just had an aha moment that I need to ask this question. When someone is arrested in Lakewood, but the jurisdiction for that particular, let's say it's a murder, you don't sit in judgment of that murder, the county does, correct? Mm-hmm. Is that considered a Lakewood bed, or is that considered a Jefferson County bed?
It's not a Lakewood Municipal Court bed.
Okay.
So we keep track of the numbers just for the Lakewood Municipal Court cases. And we only handle the misdemeanors that are the ordinances. So, and the Lakewood police have discretion as to whether to file them here or file them out there. If we wanted to look, we're talking about 10 beds that we're using, but it's probably about 800 beds that are actually Lakewood beds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's why that's the aha moment that I had, is you were showing 10, and yet we had heard from both Chief McCaskey and also Sheriff Schrader that we had a lot more than that involved, and I wanted to make sure that I understood the difference. So thank you for doing that.
And I should have been more precise.
No, yeah, it's fine.
Municipal beds.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Mm-hmm.
Ms. Vincent?
Yes, a little different note. I thank you for everything you've done, but I also want to say best wishes to Judge Ramsey. I've had the great pleasure to work with you on the Community Corrections Board, and I've always enjoyed that, and I've enjoyed your comments and your wisdom that you bring to that, and your many years of service, and also your passion for that also. I'm sure you'll miss those 7 a.m. meetings, but you may be able to get over it. So thank you very much, and congratulations.
Okay, that's all the lights that are on. Mr. Beta, did you want to address? You said you had something else, or you want to? Okay.
During our reports.
Right.
Thank you.
So, yes, so thank you very much. And I also want to just wish Judge Ramsey all the best. And the ability that you actually have to change lives, I know firsthand. And Your Honor, you changed one of my best friend's lives, and he credits you with probably being alive today. And that was a long time ago, probably 22 years ago. But you were tough, and you set him on a trajectory that changed his life, and he still to this day credits you. So thank you for all you've done, and I'm sure that that's not the only story, and we wish you all the best. Yes. All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So now we have the opportunity for public input. Public input is geared specifically towards the topic at hand. This is your opportunity to ask any questions or be part of the conversation like a regular council member is up here. You have 3 minutes, 2.5 will be green, 30 seconds yellow, and at the end your time will be up, and I'll politely try to wrap you up. First up, we have Brian Loma. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Interesting presentation, and I should say my name is Brian Loma. I am a Lakewood resident, Estes Street currently. I have a few things, so I'm just going to rattle off my notes, and then hopefully we can have some Q&A come off of that. I've learned recently about ADA compliance, and I'm concerned that paperless systems are not ADA compliant. Why? Because people with like traumatic brain injuries getting timed out of a system that might, they might have to participate in. Just one example. I'm very concerned that the city of Lakewood would be using my tax dollars to hire retired Judge Susan, we call her Clownfish. She has a history of high bond, as in enslaving people in the court system, and that's something that our state legislature has deemed inappropriate. So I do know that that she has a history of $10,000 cash bonds on misdemeanors, level 3, which is considered excessive. We're live on my own channel, and a lot of people are asking why only 3 veterans to be housed that were homeless through a diversion program in the courts. If the municipal level of things are more those ordinances like moving along and not being able to sit and rest, then there should probably be a lot more than 3 veterans in the system. So when we say what else can we do, I would suggest that making sure that we have enough housing so that people are not facing drug addiction on the streets, things like that. I also heard something about once every other week, bi-weekly for sobriety or some other kind of program. And as coming on 15 years, crack cocaine recovery, nothing happens without 30 days continuous action in changing those things. So that was one of my concerns. We want to talk about equity, then cleaning parks may not be the most equitable thing. Why aren't we having crews cleaning up Colfax and really seeing what life's like? And I appreciate that we're being creative to keep people from going directly to jail, but the courts, most of the time, are not the people that would be making that determination. It's a police officer writing a probable cause statement on the spot makes it determine if somebody is going to Lakewood County Jail or if they're getting a citation in or Jefferson County Jail or a cite and summons. I do want to end my comments on this very positive note. Counselors, not cops, in schools is absolutely the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller?
I have a few questions and a comment, and I have to agree with him. I have a friend that had 2 misdemeanor warrants, and he got a bond for $10,000, which I think is a little bit much. Anyway, I was wondering what the procedure was for if the police pick up a illegal, I'm not very politically correct, as you all know, but if they pick up an illegal immigrant, and what is the procedure and how many people have we sent to Jefferson County and ICE? Just out of curiosity. Or are they bonded out immediately and we're not taking them up to Jefferson County? I just like to know that. The second thing is on the diversion for the drug treatment plan. Could we use the drug money that's collected or the seized vehicles or even the seized homes to start treatment, use that money for treatment? I don't care what you charge a drug dealer. You take every flipping penny he's got because there's nothing you can do to a drug dealer that would be too much. The next thing I was asking, when the judge, and I appreciate everything she does, but she said it was not a revenue producing organization. I beg to differ with you. It produces a lot of money. I'd love to know how much money it produces. And the sad part about it is a policeman, if he stops 2 people, maybe a kid in a car that he's put more money into than most of us make a year, into a hot rod, do you think that a high fine on a traffic ticket is going to bother him? Or somebody who's driving around in a $100,000 Corvette, is that going to bother him? No. It's going to be the poor guy with 3 kids, a wife, and his car is put together with baling wire and duct tape. You put a big ticket on him. He can't pay the ticket. He gets a warrant put out on him. He gets thrown in jail. He has to pay a huge amount to get his bail money. That puts him farther in debt. He loses his job because he's in jail. Now, who's it affecting? What do big fines do? Does it really stop anybody from speeding? I haven't gotten a ticket in years. But I don't see where these huge fines really stop speeding. I just think it hurts people that can't afford it. Low-income people get beat up by the cops enough. And when you got road pirates that are taking their money just so they can give it to the city, that's not justice. It's extortion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll close public input. Your Honor, there were quite a few questions. I don't know if you're certainly not prepared to answer. We can try to get follow-up information from these gentlemen and try to get those questions answered the best we can, if that's easier.
Are you going to try to respond to some, or?
If you feel comfortable, I'd rather make sure that you have an opportunity to dig in more. But if you feel comfortable to respond to some, that's certainly up to you.
I think there are a couple things I can clear up pretty
Okay.
easily. So, first of all, on talking about the veterans, I know that there was, and I appreciate the comments, and certainly appreciate getting some feedback. With the veterans, saying that there were just 3 that we were able to get housed. Our veterans program only takes 8 at a time, and so they're fairly carefully selected. Like I said, they used to be mostly homeless, but the ones that we've felt that we've needed to intervene with this year have been ones that have domestic violence charges and fewer homeless veterans. I'm certainly not saying there aren't homeless veterans out there. We have other programs and other ways that we try to help them, but as far as this program, we only deal with 8 at a time, just because the resources of the court are not sufficient. We could always get a whole bunch more probation officers. With Mr. Skilling's offer of things, my wish list, and I start thinking we could, get a lot more probation officers so that we could deal with more. With deciding who goes to jail, the municipal court summonses are almost always summonses. The domestic violence defendants get arrested. Probably just a few defendants a month get arrested and then are given municipal tickets after they're jailed. But for the most part, the police do not arrest the municipal defendants. They're giving them tickets and sending them to municipal court because they think we can deal with them. Most of the people who are arrested end up being filed in county court, so that sort of answers that. And I think most of these, maybe we can go ahead and I can spend a little more time looking at them. They're, most of these I think I could answer, but I don't want to just be too choppy about it or take too much time. So we'll address those in writing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Roybal.
Thank you, Mayor. Your Honor, thank you again for helping all our veterans, and thank you for helping our, you have a program that is awesome, eight veterans at a time, but I also want to bring out to the public and notification that that's only one program. We have another one here in Lakewood, and we have been bestowed the honor from Department of Veterans Affairs that they have 40 beds for veterans that are homeless. It's 30 male, 10 female, and it's here in Lakewood. And the VA has taken responsibility to help our veterans. And this is the first veterans program in the nation, and we've been honored to have them host them here in the city of Lakewood. And I just wanted to bring that out and let everybody know. And the program, it's called Valor Point Domicile. So you can Google it, look it up. There it is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. We will move on to item 4, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Hodson.
Thank you, Mayor. The next item of conversation is around the city attorney office review. And although we don't have a presentation prepared, what I wanted to do is just review with you the chronology of opportunities that you've had to address this particular issue and to remind you of the journey that brings you to where we are today. First of all, on October 21st, 2018, which is a year ago today, we received a request for council action by Councilor Franks, and summarizing, given the size, population of our city, which has grown to more than 150,000, it is prudent to revisit the outsourcing decision. So in other words, just wanting to take a look at the model / function of the city attorney's office. That was October 21st. I personally met with Councilor Franks in January for clarification to make sure the subsequent study session would meet all the points that she was interested in discussing. On April 15th, we had a City Council study session, and it was led by our then Human Resources Director, Jeff Dolan. So that was on April 15th, 2019, and that was titled a City Attorney Assessment. Then on June 17th, 2019, as a result of you requesting staff to do some work in terms of what other type of alternatives there might be to the model that we currently employ, the staff, under my name, submitted a pretty thorough email to you. Again, that was June 17th, describing what that might be, and it was entitled City Attorney Follow-Up. That was resent to you on September 5th, the exact same document you received again. And some of you asked for it again, so I sent it again. Nothing personal, Councilor Vincent. So then, I'm kidding. Okay, so then on August 18th, 2019, we received another request for council action. This one from Councilor Franks and Skilling, and the summary was request to follow up on prior discussions regarding the city attorney office and information contained within the process document, which is the one that was created June 17th, within the process document that was prepared by staff and provided to council to assist with the dialogue. So that brings us to where we are today, October 21, 2019. So I just wanted to summarize what that's been for you. And remember, it's important to delineate the conversation around talking about the function of the city attorney office and that model compared to performance. You received the city attorney annual report that covered 2018 up until April 2019, and then on May 6th, you did a city attorney performance review. The point in me saying that is to bifurcate those two things. The conversation's been around really looking at the model and the functionality of the city attorney office function, not the performance. So if we can be just really mindful of talking about the model itself, I think that would be helpful in the conversation. So with that, there's no presentation, and I'd just like to hand it to you for conversation, and we'll follow up with whatever your direction is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hodson. Thanks for the quick review. And just to reiterate, so some communities have a model where there's a contract city manager, which is what we have with city attorney. Maybe they do city managers. I don't know. But they do, so some communities do utilize that. Some have what they would call an in-house city attorney. And so we have the first model mentioned, and that is where we're at tonight to discuss that based upon the request from Councilors Franks and Skilling. So I will turn it over to Mr. Skilling.
Thank you, Mayor. And I won't rehash the study sessions that we've had on this. As Ms. Hodson just alluded to, this has been an ongoing discussion now for quite some time. Given, and again, going back to Councilor Franks' original request way back when, given that we're a city now of 150, 160,000 folks, would it be more prudent to and more efficient, and for a number of reasons, to have an in-house model so that we, similar to our city attorney, who's an employee, our deputy city attorney, and all of our high-level folks are employees of the city, would it make more sense to bring that in-house and have that person as an employee that, according to, I believe, the charter, answers directly to this council? And that wouldn't necessarily change from the existing model, but it would make it more of that employee-employer relationship rather than the one that we've had in place for many years, as the mayor alluded to, with Mr. Cox's law firm. To that end, I, along with Councilor Franks, have been trying to find the best way to approach this, and you'd have to be blind not to understand that there are some implications of making this type of decision. We've had a law firm that has relied on this relationship for some years. That law firm employs Mr. Cox. Mr. Cox is an asset to the organization. And so you're trying to, as Ms. Hodson said, separate out the two things. And taking that into account, it still, in my opinion, is a good policy to make it an in-house position. I think that makes sense with a city our size. And we do know, and I understand, that making this switch almost feels midstream if you were to just make the switch right away, considering that you have Mr. Cox and his law firm, as I've just spoken to, have relied on this relationship. Not only that, but this council, obviously we see a small part of what this city attorney's office does. It's a very large office. We heard Judge Stavik refer to some of all of the great work that the city attorneys are doing. That is all under the purview of the city attorney's office. And so they handle everything, and all of the mundane things we never see, all the research projects, everything. We get some of the bigger items, maybe especially a lot of the land use stuff, but they're handling some of our bigger litigation cases that are big litigation cases. And I raise that point because litigation, especially in a city this size, and the ongoing cases, the institutional knowledge, all of those things are not easily transferred. And we would not want to hurt the city by making any type of change that would affect that or detriment the city or those cases in any way. With that, I do have proposals that I would like the council to consider for consensus, and it's three proposals, three pillars of basically one proposal to switch the existing model from a contract model to an in-house model, with the transition to be completed no later than 18 months from now. So that would be in 2021. That would not, and I want to be very clear on this point, just because there's a backstop of 18 months does not supersede the terms of the existing agreement that the city has with the firm, meaning the firm has certain rights under an existing contract, the city has certain rights, and this would not supersede the rights of either party under that contract. The second part of the proposal would be that an ad hoc committee of council members is formed with a staff designee, preferably the city manager's office, to create a profile for the candidate and determine a high-level transition strategy. I've spoken to some of the pitfalls that could occur in a transition when there's a lot of litigation, when there's the institutional knowledge. The third pillar would be the work performance and the expectations that we had. Ms. Hodson alluded to the when we had the city attorney's review, and there was, out of that, there was a work performance, I believe it was a metric or whatever you call it, that roadmap would still be in place going forward. That's not disappearing just because we're doing this, because the city does still have business over the next 18 months, certainly. So with that, that would be the proposal that I would see consensus on. And again, another reason Ms. Hodson spoke to it, just separating out the person from process. And I believe that the 18-month transition really takes into account all of those things and gives all parties a good long runway to make this happen. So with that, that would be the proposal.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is there any discussion from council? Mr. Abel?
Mr. Skilling, do you have any comparables with the larger cities in the state? How many are in-house and how many are outside attorneys? Also, I'm curious about when I believe our contracted attorney is a generalist, and when we have special cases needing special expertise, we hire from the outside. Any idea of the budget ramifications of this?
Sir.
The first part of your question, I believe, was answered in Mr. Dolan's presentation. So if they're flipping through slides now, I don't have the slides right in front of me, but I believe that was part of the ongoing discussions that we had when we were looking at the various models, which brings me to the second question, which was, what were the budget implications? To be clear, regardless of the system that's used, our generalist, and that's not a poor way of putting it, our generalist city attorney, whether it's in a contract model or an in-house model, will still be outsourcing to other law firms. That is all of the outside firms. I think that every expectation would be Mr. Cox's firm, other firms are all part of the city's Rolodex. We use a lot of different folks from a lot of different firms for our outside litigation. We don't handle, for those bigger cases, Mr. Cox can correct me if I'm wrong, examples even outside of litigation, when we had the campaign finance, we had, the top attorneys in the state, Mr. Gruskin came in on that. That doesn't change, regardless of the model. That will still be in place. We will pay the outside counsel, whether it's in-house or it's contract. The billable hours, the outside is the billable hour. I think the thing that would change more directly for us budgetarily would be that instead of billable hours on a contract basis for our top line city attorney, it becomes an employee, a salaried position similar to our city attorney. So I'm sorry. That's the second time tonight. I apologize. Our city manager, capital C, capital M. Thank you.
Thank you. So under the current situation, I believe we have the benefit of the expertise of other attorneys on Mr. Cox's staff at cost, and we would. What do you envision as the city attorney's staff needs?
So the second pillar of this, the reason that I went as far and we went as far as to say an ad hoc committee formed of council members and a staff member is because this is exactly the type of transition questions that will need to be answered. I think the model we have now, for the most part, for example, we have Mr. Graham with us tonight, is a deputy city attorney. He's a city employee. The city attorneys, I believe that the staffing would probably remain the same, although I don't want to speak out of turn on that. So I think the numbers remain similar because, again, any outsourcing is the same now as it would be then. But again, I don't think anyone's under any illusion that this task isn't without its pitfalls, and that's why I think it's important to have a committee based of members of this council, based of the staff, to come up with those types of answers, because that will be impactful on the type of candidate that you are seeking.
And I believe our city attorney now is in the building 4 days a week. Is that correct? Would you be envisioning a 5-day-a-week in-house legal expert for consultations?
They do need to come into work. I would say 7 days, but that may scare some folks off. But yes, I envision a full-time employee like our city manager, Kathy Hodson, but it's a similar type relationship, that it's a full-time employee. We are attorneys, so there is working hours involved in that. So certainly a full-time position 5 days a week, or whatever the job requires.
Mm-hmm. And would you see it as a salaried position, or in cases where they might need to be here 7 days a week, would you see that as an overtime kind of position, or just flat salary?
They would be an exempt salaried employee, similar again to our city manager.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Beta?
Thank you, Mayor. We've been over this.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Ms. Hodson had an answer for us.
Oh,
Forgive me. Yep. Sorry, Ms. Hodson.
To Councilor Abel's first question about comparable communities, I happen to have the slide deck that was presented in April, so I can answer that. 14 Colorado governmental entities responded to the request. You might remember this. 13 out-of-state governmental entities responded. I have the list of who that included, and here are the results. Of the organizations who responded, approximately 45% contract the chief legal counsel. The remaining 55% utilized an in-house chief legal counsel with a hybrid staffing model. Several out-of-state larger organizations utilized an in-house model, and 100% of cities utilize some outsourced and specialized legal services. I am happy to find this somehow and to resend it to you if you're interested. It'll take me a day. I can't do it right now.
The numbers you just provided are exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Mr. Beta.
Thank you, Mary. So we've been over this and had a number of discussions on this, study sessions and so forth. And I don't know that we need to go through all of the details again. I do think, in my judgment, after reviewing what we've been through, that it would be in the best interest of our city to go to a in-house model, as we're calling it. I think it would be more efficient financially, economically, legally. I think that it would. One of the issues that concern me is our city attorney is responsible for, under our laws and under our charter, for managing the other members of the department. In this case, we have a contractor who is responsible for managing our employees, and that's problematic in and of itself. It becomes even more problematic, I think, when there's a clause in the contract with our contractor that disclaims any responsibility for the actions of our city employees, especially in the legal department. So I think that creates some problems. It's problematic, and I think to have a city attorney who's an employee will be a much cleaner in terms of the chain of command, and that's just one of many reasons. So I will be supporting this to move on tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Vincent?
I don't know exactly how to phrase this question. Are you asking us to make a decision without any more information, just to go ahead to an in-house legal team, an in-house counsel? Because you're saying 18 months, but then what I'm hearing is a lot of unanswered questions. And I don't know if that would impact a decision. Are you understanding where I'm going with that?
Yes, I think the information that we've received over I think the study session, the work sessions, everything that we've had up to this point since the beginning of the conversation is the underlying information to make the decision whether to switch to a in-house counsel. Then there's the second part. Then there's the part of, okay, if we're going to do this long transition period and give everyone a chance to transition, all the parties involved, the next part of that is, okay, what next? What will that RFP, and it might be a little inarticulate, but what will that job profile look like for the city attorney? We've already met and we have certain metrics, roadmaps, all of that. This council, since this is the position that answers directly to us, this council will have direct input on who they would like for their attorney and what he or she looks like, qualifications, what have you. I suspect that along the way, that there may be other challenges. There could be things, certain cases that may last longer. What if Mr. Cox's law firm decides to separate earlier than maybe anticipated or something of that nature? These are all things that should be contemplated by the body, and that's why I think the ad hoc committee is really important. There are a lot of questions with, as I said earlier, the ongoing litigation, if it does take longer than the 18 months, if it takes 2 years, a lot of complex stuff that could come up. And I think that Mr. Cox can probably best identify that in working with the transition on how that would work. Also important to have the CMO involved as well. So I think the underlying decision now is, do we switch to the in-house model, and then knowing that on a going forward basis there is a lot of work for this council to do in establishing what that model looks like, because we don't have, obviously up until now, we don't have that model available to us. So we need to create that. It is our attorney, and we need to create what that will look like.
Okay, because that was my fears. There could be cases that are continuing on past this 18 months, so, or new ones that come out in the transition while we're trying to do that. So thank you.
Ms. Harrison?
Thank you. This is a really big, I think, possible change for the city to consider this. And we're right in the middle of the silly season. I would feel much more comfortable if we would consider delaying this until after we have a new council seated before we would make this decision. This is a big deal for us to try to make a decision, and then 2 weeks down the road we might have some different people sitting up here. So I'm not saying no to the conversation. I'm just saying no to the timing. I feel like we may want to wait on this and maybe have another discussion at retreat and then bring it up next year. But I'm not comfortable in taking this forward right now until we have, the same people that are going to have to be on the committee and making that decision need to kind of be in the room when we're having this discussion. And we've got some changes possibly, so.
Ms. Franks?
Thanks, Mayor Paul. Well, I guess I wanted to start out by saying I brought the first council request for action a year ago, so I certainly don't think the pace has been too aggressive. And as Mayor Paul and others have said, we don't stop working, even if, if some of us aren't here. The job is the job, and to keep working. So I certainly appreciate Councilor Harrison's point. But again, the request was brought forth a year ago. And as our city manager said, the work product that we asked them to prepare our roadmap was mid-year. And then I talked to our city manager. No one was giving feedback. No one was having questions. So the assumption was there were no questions. And then that was sent out multiple times. So I think that if you've looked at the roadmap, I think our staff did an amazing job, really laid out the guidelines of which then that ad hoc committee could take a look at each of those things and make sure that we're doing our due diligence. you always do need to mitigate risk. And I think that with the 18 months certainly allows us to start talking through and mitigating that risk. But that doesn't mean you don't have risk every day. There should be, at some point, again, that contract does have a 90-day clause, I believe. So again, you're never as safe as you think you are. Things can happen and there can be turnover. So my position hasn't changed. I think the in-house, the employee model takes us from being a client to being a part of a team and a part of an employee relationship. And so I appreciate all the work that the city staff has done, and I certainly would be supporting moving to the in-house model.
Ms. Gutwein.
Thank you. So I do want to acknowledge and appreciate that the proposal that you're mentioning, I think, is thoughtful and in terms of transition plan, and it leaves us without making too rash of a decision. However, this is the first I'm really having a chance to think about this. It certainly, of course, wasn't in the packet, which is fine. But I think that I'm not prepared to make a decision to switch models at this point. In all of our discussions, we've discussed this for a year, as mentioned, and we've talked about all the different kinds of roles that the city manager plays, and then again, city attorney. That the city attorney plays not just with us making policies, but then also just the integral part of every department. My concern is that we are, as Councilor Harrison mentioned, about to have potentially quite a few new council members up here. There's onboarding, there's training for those people. There's a significant level of learning curve for what each department does, what we're able to do. But then we also have Question 200, which we're implementing. And, I think that is a real priority for our community. I'm concerned about how this additional transition is going to impact that. So I haven't heard a very compelling reason, in my opinion, to change models. I think that the amount of time that we've had a relationship with our current city attorney shows to me that there is a team. So I know we don't want to go into the person versus the function, but I just want to make it clear to the community that the model that we have been operating in is one that we've been operating in for a long time. And I don't think that we are putting our community at risk in any way. I think that we also, as Councilor Abel mentioned, have the opportunity to work with other experts depending on what we're dealing with. So I am not comfortable moving this forward at this moment. If I am up here again in January, then I would be happy to take that on then, or whoever is representing Ward 5 can do that as well. So, thank you.
Mr. LeBear.
Thank you. Just want to piggyback a little bit on what Councilor Vincent said. I don't feel comfortable with moving forward with focusing on the model first and then finding out all the information, the details in a committee after the fact. I think we should do it the other way around. In fact, I have some experience being on the Performance Evaluations Committee on the Denver Regional Council of Governments. That's something where we're regularly meeting and learning about the performance and following a sort of plan of how things are being implemented with our directors, and we're doing that on an ongoing basis in a committee setting. And I think had we had something like that, here in the city of Lakewood, it might have helped flesh out some of these answers and questions throughout the last few years or the last year, whenever this discussion started. And then I think that might might have been illuminating, and if we actually had a need for changing the structure or not. I piggyback on Councilor Gutwein and what she said. I haven't heard some sort of convincing reason that we need to change the entire model at this point in time. However, I'm open to the discussion and learning more about this this topic. So thanks.
Mr. Abel.
As has been repeatedly said tonight, we've heard about this model for the last year. We've had plenty of time to think it over. If we wait until new folks are seated, we'll have to repeat the whole process. 4 years from now, we'll still be talking about the same dang thing. We have the information. The information's not going to change, and I believe it's time to make a decision. I'll be supporting Mr. Skilling's ask.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councilman Skilling and Franks for bringing this forward. I am supportive. This has been out there for a year to have us think about the way this would shape itself up. I appreciate the idea that having in-house creates more of a team. I am concerned, as Councilman Beatus said, to have an outside contractor who's actually directing staff that's city staff. There's many reasons to go forward with this, and I appreciate you bringing it, and I am supportive. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll just say a couple things here. Councilor Skilling, I appreciate, I know that you've worked hard on this, and certainly I think there's great merit to the 3 different pillars and the opportunity for us to learn. And there's a lot that, you know, we may interact 5% of the time with the city attorney, whereas the flip side is 480 and across the street interacts probably 95% of the time. And there's a lot more of those things that happen, a lot of, you know, mundane things, criminal things, you name it. I kind of see more of it because I think I'm named on every lawsuit that happens at the city. So I certainly get to see more. And I would say one thing I would challenge is I don't want a teammate. I want a city attorney that's going to protect and uphold the law and protect the city. And that's the most important part of this process for me. So, you know, I think at this point, you know, we've gone back and forth for years. It's kind of a political football. Some people, when they see an election coming, they use it to say we shouldn't make this decision now, or some say we should. And I can hearken back to 8 different elections where that's been used to argue each way. And I don't think that should be the argument. I think it should be what is best for the city. What's the best for our residents? And we also have a fiduciary responsibility. And that's where I do have one concern. We did talk, and Mr. Skilling, you talked about how we would still quarterback, but if we're putting together an ad hoc committee, I don't know what I don't know. We may not still, if we bring in an in-house model, right? We may be looking at hiring 1 or 2 or 3 more attorneys, depending upon what we hear and what we really know. And so that is one concern that I have. I know it's been out there for a year, but it's just been information that's been given to us. There's not been the next step of saying, okay, this is what this looks like. This is the next step. This is what the costs would be that are involved. This would be a potential savings to the city, and there could very well be a real savings, and we know that's important at this time. So I am not 100% comfortable, but I think that what you propose is the next best alternative to bring that forward if we need to do that. And with those 18 months, ensuring, one, that we have some continuity, that we can continue to deal with some of the legal issues, all the legal issues we have. And so be it, if we do get to that point, we have a great opportunity for kind of, I don't think dual training is the word, but where we have, you know, kind of a nice handoff from a very important role to somebody else who may be taking that role. That's going to be really important. So, you know, a couple months worth if possible. So that's where I'm at, and I know this is not easy for a lot of people, so I appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness with this matter. Mr. Roybal?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, a lot of thought went into this. Our city is growing. We need to change. Change is hard. Councillor Franks and Councillor Skilling, thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you for thinking outside the box. I just wanted to say, Councillor Beta said it the best, and I echo that. And I'm going to be supporting this measure. Thank you.
Okay. So keep in mind then that this next council will be the ones that then take this forward, because ad hoc committee would need to be formed, and that all that would not be seated until well into December or January, based upon our calendar with one business meeting left. Mr. LeBear?
To that, I have a process question. Is this a resolution that's coming back to us to talk about changing the model, or what does that look like?
Mr. Graham?
Yeah, so under the charter, if you want to create an ad hoc committee to make these decisions, it does take a resolution. So that would be something you'd have to do at a regular meeting, and then you can move forward. So that's pretty much the process.
Ms. Vincent?
So then would the timing on that be after a new council is in place? Naturally, with the whole thing. So, okay. One more thing. Is there any modification that we can do, that we can establish an ad hoc committee to look at some of these questions less than 18 months, but then to come back with some facts and data? Yes, I'm looking at Councilor Skilling, sorry, because it was your. But I'm looking at him. Okay. And I'm looking at you. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I think at this point, I'll answer both questions. To Councilor LeBeer's point, we don't vote at the study session, obviously. This is just a consensus to move this forward. I am bringing it now, and this may seem, the timing of it's meant to not be political, and I think you all probably know me by now that I'm trying to avoid politicalness, and that was part of, a lot of the thought that went into this and the conversations. I think the process part is, we as a council, as the board, have to vote to do anything with this. I mean, period. So we can't vote tonight, but what we can do is give consensus that this is what we're going to do, that we are going to move forward with this model. Then they would bring back a resolution to change the model. Part of that resolution would then have to be either a separate resolution to establish an ad hoc committee that will do the ideal candidate profile and so forth. But one way or another, the board or the council has to take a vote that this will happen. And what I'm trying to do now is make it so that it's not a political thing, that the folks, because we do have an election coming up. So if this body that has been looking at this issue for over a year, however long it's been, if we can make a determination to move it forward. And if not, I don't want to have an even more political conversation or what have you when it comes back. I want to have consensus. And if not everyone agrees, well, okay, we oftentimes don't all agree, but at least we're either moving it forward or not moving it forward. But there will have to be a vote at some later time. And I think, unless somebody can correct me, that would necessarily be after the election.
That's correct.
There's nothing that can change that, so that's where we are. But this body has been looking at this issue, and I do want to come full circle with it.
So, Mr. Skilling, your light was on. Did you want to address anything else, or did you have another comment or something secondary? Your speak light's on.
Yeah, I think I was speaking to, Mr. LeBeer had asked that question about process, and I think I knew the answer. So
Okay, great, thanks. Ms. Franks?
This is more of a process thing for me. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, would be the consensus to either move forward or not. And if the consensus is to move forward, it would be a resolution to change the model, but it would be an ordinance to create the commission. But maybe that's only because the housing one was a permanent one and that required an ordinance. So is it just a resolution if it's an ad hoc?
An ad hoc committee requires just a resolution.
I just wanted to get myself clear. So it's a resolution and a resolution. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Abel?
We could entertain a resolution next week. Could we not? Why not?
Because it hasn't been properly noticed. It won't be noticed.
We have a week to do so.
That is an adequate time for it to be noticed.
We used to give notice on a 3-day basis.
I'm sorry, the packet has already gone out for next week's meeting.
We used to do that on a 3-day basis, send it out on Friday for Monday's meeting.
Well, this is something that was changed, I want to say 2 years ago, as a result of a recommendation and an approval by all of council.
There was a resolution by all of council for 2 weeks. I don't recall that being a resolution. I thought it was just an agreement we came to about procedure.
I think it's in council's policies and procedures. I believe that it is. So it was a decision that council made as a result of a conversation we had at the retreat. And I think it was, I'm looking at Councilor Franks. I think it was 2 years ago, Councilor Franks made, I'm sorry? Yeah, it's a 10-day notice.
Thank you.
Mr. LeBeer?
Yeah, I was just going to thank Councilor Skilling for his comments on can't remember. All of his comments are amazing. Sorry, I lost my place. If you want to go to the next person.
Mr. Cox, did you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily planning to speak, but having heard the discussion, I wanted to clarify a few things just from the perspective of the current city attorney. And my initial comments will be from that perspective as a city attorney looking at the proposal, looking at the concept, and as objectively as possible thinking about how it would play out. And just a couple of comments in that regard for the process. As Ms. Hodson outlined at the beginning here, there have been several steps along the way leading up to this beginning, apparently a year ago today. So there's this impression that there's been a long process. My sense as the person sitting in that office is that it has been a question of fits and starts. It's been a proposal here, a study session a few months later, further action after that, the report from the HR department, which is probably fine, but from a productivity standpoint, from a efficiency standpoint, it can be difficult to work under those circumstances where you think, okay, we've talked about that. There's been no follow-up. There's been no presentation to us about concerns arising out of that step in the process. So we just about get to the point of thinking, okay, we can focus on other things, and then it would be scheduled again. But be that as it may, it has been a year of events leading up to this point. One of the things that I thought when this process began, I was eager to see what HR was going to present, and that's the material that Ms. Hodson was looking at earlier. I have not seen any information that would project a more efficient, more economically sustainable situation under that model. It may be. I just don't think that the information that we've seen so far confirms that or suggests that. And there are going to be expenses on both sides that could tilt that scale. But just looking at where we are at this point, I haven't seen anything tangible that would say this is a better situation. You want to add staff, as has been suggested? Sure, that could happen now too. We'd love to have additional attorneys supporting the city because the workload has been increased in recent years. But if it's to remain the same structure, the same staffing levels, I don't know whether that will save the city any money or not. And some of the questions that are outlined in the materials that HR presented back in June ask those questions. What's the business motivation, justification for the change? What will change as a result of this revision to the model? And those seem to me, I think as Councilman LeBure suggested, those seem like questions that should be answered before the decision is made to go in a particular direction. That said, it's entirely the council's prerogative. I have no quarrel with the council's right to make this decision at any time. Well, let me shift at this point from the position to the individual, and just say that there are some considerations that I would have anticipated would get a little bit more attention. As far as I know, there's never been an outreach to city staff to find out how the people we work with every day feel about the current model. That seems to me to be important information. We've got people on the city attorney's staff who were serving the city when they worked on a contract basis with the firm of Gorsuch-Curtis many years ago. Those same people were on the staff when all of those folks were brought in-house because that firm collapsed. And there are people who are still on the city staff now that we're in the current situation where they're employees and the city attorney is not. I think there are opportunities to consult with those folks, consult with other departments, and get some information. I don't know if it would have changed the outcome or not, but be that as it may, I think there's some valuable information available there. It's been 12 years in this role, a little bit over 12 years, which from a trivia standpoint is interesting when you consider that my predecessor, Roger Noonan, between the two of us, we've represented Lakewood for about 40 of the 50 years we're celebrating this year. He gets most of them, of course, but at least I made double figures. And finally, and I have a lot of other notes I've taken down, but in the interest of time and efficiency, I want to thank Councilor Skilling for the well thought out proposal. He and I talked last week, and I was impressed with his consideration for a lot of things. And before he and I talked, as I thought about the possibility of this transition, it led me to think a little bit more about my career aspirations, my long-term, medium-term, short-term goals. I hope there's still time for long-term goals. In a sense, I think we've kind of reached the same point almost at the same time. You know, when you're in a role like this, there are days when you think, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my career. There are other days when you think, I may not want to do this tomorrow or tonight even. But when you're forced to say, what's my plan? When do I think my time with Lakewood might come to an end? And I can't answer that, but a year and a half maybe sounds about right. This is a stressful position, a lot of work, a lot of bosses to please, or at least explain things to when we need to. It's hard to get a consensus when there are divisions among the council, and therefore the advice we present sometimes is met favorably by one group and not so much by another, and that can be stressful. Greg had a full head of hair when he started here. Yeah. So I guess this is my way of saying that if this is the direction that council has chosen to take, it might just be fortuitous and an indication that we're about at that point where through that 18-month transition, I can assist the city in that process and then focus on where my career goes next, whether it's another community. We're proud of the firm that we've built. We built it to serve our municipal clients. It's all we do. We now have 8 attorneys. Some of them were hired in large part to help with the backlog of work that the Lakewood has produced, but we have other ways to keep them busy. But I will remain with my firm in some capacity, and we'll figure it out. And as so often happens in these situations, maybe it turns out to be a blessing in disguise. So thank you for your consideration. I assume I'm not going anywhere for another 1.5 years, so we'll talk again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Cox, you're a class act, so thank you, sir. Mr. Beta.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as I understand, if I'm counting right, we have a majority consensus here to move Mr. Skilling's proposal forward. I understand that's where we're at.
Yes, sir. And
take it to the next step. I was going to get into some of the financial issues that Mr. Cox raised, but I think we'll save it for another time. So that's all.
Okay, so now we'll move into the public input portion. Again, 3 minutes pertaining to this conversation. And Mr. Henderson, you're first.
Good evening. Good to see you all. And thank you very much for the conversation that you've shared with us. It's been a reflection of a year's worth of work, a lot of thought, a lot of debate, I'm sure, and a lot of conversation. I'd like to submit 2 thoughts with respect to the issues that you all have raised. First of all, with respect to the timing, I served as a public official. I served as a private attorney in a medium and a large firm, 500 attorneys. And I've also served as in-house counsel for a $1 billion company. In that $1 billion company, we moved from outside counsel to in-house counsel nationwide, involving 10 class action pieces of litigation in less than 30 days. In less than 30 days. You can do this in less than 30 days. You have a couple of key pieces of litigation. You have outside counsel handling those litigation. Mr. Cox's firm is not handling it. I've been to court. I've seen the attorneys handling it. And it's not Mr. Cox, with all due respect. It's other counsel. You can go in-house in 30 days without a blip in the screen, without any interruption in the representation of the city. My second point, I know you're trying to keep separate the evaluation, the performance evaluation, and the model. I respectfully suggest to you, as an attorney with over 35 years of experience, much of which has been managing other attorneys, there is a difference. It's the same difference between serving the public and making as much money for your firm as you can. I've been in those firms, medium and small and large firm. Your performance as an attorney is measured by how much money you bring into the firm as a rainmaker, bringing in other clients, or in doing the work yourself. It has an impact. It has an impact on your ultimate loyalties. I suggest to you that the collusion that we experienced here in the Big Sky evaluation between Mr. Cox and the Big Sky attorney in basically writing this city's opinion, which was in effect written by Big Sky, wouldn't have happened if we had inside counsel, in-house counsel. It would not have happened.
Thank you.
Connie? Connie, did you wish to speak on this? Brian, do you wish to speak? Okay. Good evening.
Hello again. I'm blown away that I've just spent like the last half hour listening to you guys decide whether or not you need to have your own legal representation in-house. Sounds like the most logical thing that I could ever imagine, right? Outside liabilities, billing hours, there's so much that goes on there. But realistically, if your city attorney isn't helping to mitigate the things that are going on inside the city because he's an active like employee that pays attention, knows what's going on, how are they being effective? I mean, I'm sure you're being effective, but you have an outside agency. They're always looking at their pocketbook or at other things, right? It's not their primary job. That's my opinion. And so I've listened, and I'm saying a lot. Apologize to my followers back there. I once sat in the city council meetings in another community where I was a member, and for 3 years they argued about whether to buy their own water or to let a foreign company run it. And it's always going to get more expensive the longer you wait to jump on something like this. That's all I got for you.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Mueller?
Okay, is anybody going to be surprised if I say I agree with you guys? Is there anybody? No, but I'm afraid that 18 months is completely out of the question. If you can't get things switched over within 30 to 60 days, you know, you guys are like a board of directors. You make decisions on personnel. You make decisions on everything. It's for you guys to decide and to activate it and get it done quickly. You know, you can kill a man with 1,000 stabs, but he's still going to die. So make it quick. All right. The reason why I say this is that you don't want to ask the employees what they think. That's not your job. Your job is to make decisions. Your job is to take care of business within 60 days. I'm upset because of the Morrison, what he did at Morrison with IGA. And I can go through this whole list of stuff that didn't get completed. But the thing about it is that we need somebody that concentrates, that isn't diverted by other projects. His law firm may be working on Morrison or this or that or this. I don't care about that. I care about Lakewood, and I care about the board of directors handling things for the people who are the stockholders. We are the stockholders. It costs us money. For him to be here for 18 months is unrealistic. 60 days, that's it. As a stockholder, I'm saying 60 days, done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I will close public input. And thank you for everybody weighing in. So I don't think there's anything else left here. So I'll turn it over to council reports unless there's something that we need from Ms. Hodson or... Yeah. Okay. Mr. Roybal, we'll start down there.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to have our Ward 3 meeting, Councilor Beta and myself, this weekend. Please come join us. We're at Phillips United Methodist Church, and it starts at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Ms. Gutwein? Mr. Skilling?
I apologize, but just to be clear, because I think that the city manager was just counting, just to be clear for the tape, do we have consensus?
Yeah.
Is that, because I just want to be clear.
Yes, there's consensus.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I do have a report. November's Ward 4 meeting will not be occurring in November. We are canceling this meeting as your counselors are out of town. Thank you.
The beer?
No report.
Mr. Abel?
No report.
Ms. Harrison? No report. Ms. Franks? Ms. Johnson?
No report.
Mr. Beta?
Yes, I do. And as I indicated during our report on the courts, I do have a report and some comments I want to make, but rather than doing them, I felt that they involve some policy options and questions that our council needs to think about and consider for the future. And that's why I felt it was best to bring it up here as opposed to there. So let me start by saying that this is very timely given our Chief Judge's report today. Last week we heard from the county sheriff, the district attorney, and the county commissioner, all elected officials, telling us if Proposition 1A did not pass, we would be facing a closing of a large portion of our county jail, early release of prisoners sentenced by our Lakewood municipal judges, and a loss of ability to accept future prisoners sentenced by our Lakewood municipal judges. Just for your information, Proposition 1A is the proposed detaborization or debrucing of Jefferson County. It is not my purpose tonight to speak either in favor or against this proposition. Instead, I'm quite concerned how these suggested actions would affect our city and the ability of our courts to deal with serious offenders, especially domestic violence offenders and repeat offenders, where jail sentences are not only mandated by law, but in some cases they're very appropriate for the safety and protection of our Lakewood residents. I've done some of my own research on these issues, and I want to state to our citizens that as a member of this council, I tend to resist any such attempt by Jefferson County to take these actions. I have great concern and objection to the fact that our offenders that are sentenced by our municipal judges to the county jail are bottom priority in terms of jail space, and that was confirmed by Judge tonight. This is not acceptable in any way to me, and it should not be acceptable to our city council. Our Lakewood taxpayers pay millions of dollars in sales taxes as well as mill levies and property taxes to the County of Jefferson, and for the purposes of funding this jail. And I think it's very necessary for our municipal judges to be able to enforce jail sentence when they determine it's appropriate by law or under the circumstances. Without that, they become virtually powerless to enforce our laws. Moreover, I must seriously question the county's legal ability to take the actions they've suggested, as well as the propriety of these actions. First, let me say it is clear under Colorado law that one of the primary duties of a county is to provide and pay for a jail to house prisoner and inmates. This is clearly set forth in Colorado Revised Statutes 17-26-101, and the title of that statute is Jail in Each County. You can Google it and read it for yourself. It's very simple, clear, and straightforward. Secondly, contrary to the statements we heard on Monday, no state judge has the authority or the jurisdiction to modify a sentence imposed by a Lakewood municipal judge. Only a Lakewood judge can modify a jail sentence lawfully imposed by a Lakewood judge on an offender like a domestic violence offender. Third, the sheriff, except for the awarding of good time under Colorado law, has no other authority to release or eliminate a sentence imposed by a Lakewood judge, except under the circumstances we heard tonight where the judges have agreed by agreement to give him that authority. But otherwise, he does not have that authority. Next, as a home rule city, we have options. As you heard tonight, we can instruct our police agents to write the summonses for all domestic violence charges into county court instead of municipal court, thereby forcing the county and the state prosecutors to sentence and imprison these offenders through the state courts, thereby putting them at the top of their priority list instead of at the bottom as our sentences are. We can also contract with other counties like Broomfield County to house our prisoners in their jail. Currently, they are accepting prisoners from other counties like Boulder County. Of course, in that case, we would expect a full refund to the city of Lakewood of all the millions of dollars in taxes that our Lakewood residents currently pay to Jefferson County for the jail. I would also point out that the county manager has quietly filed a budget that restores all funding and even increases to the sheriff's budget for 2020, even if Proposition 1A is defeated by the voters. This comes on research that was recently done by the Centennial Institute and is a matter of public record. Finally, if the good citizens of Lakewood should determine that they are not getting their money's worth from Jefferson County, perhaps it's time to consider making Lakewood the city and county of Lakewood, similar to the city and county of Denver and the city and county of Broomfield. It is our council's duty to not idly accept these drastic proposals from the county that threaten our residents' safety and well-being. Based upon this information, I'm calling on our elected county officials to disclaim in total and immediately these options that were proposed last week, and to immediately release publicly a statement that these options are no longer being considered by the county. Enough said. Thank you.
Ms. Vincent?
When we passed the hotel motel ordinance, there was a clause in there that if something serious happened, it would go to a hearing. We wouldn't have to do all the other steps to that. So we've had 2 murders since that hotel motel ordinance was passed. So I did not know if those hearings had been scheduled yet, and if so, when.
We don't thank you for that. We don't have that information, and as soon as that is available, I'll make sure that all of City Council is aware of when those hearings will be scheduled.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And again, I want to echo a couple thanks. Mr. Skilling, thank you for your thoughtful work in putting a lot of this together, as well as your conversations with Mr. Cox. And Mr. Cox, again, you're a true gentleman, a class act, and fortunately, a lot of folks don't know exactly what you do and the dual reality of not only having this side of the building, but what goes on the other side with the whole court system and everything that's involved. So I want to thank you. And ballots are out, so make sure that you get those turned in. And there's 5 locations now where you can actually drop your ballots off, which is really important. And then just something I'll share, one of the great joys of this job is meeting with our kids and our youth, and we have always wonderful opportunities. Miss Millard does a great job bringing them in, and they do a mock city council meeting where they potentially are going to ban Halloween candy or not. But today we had a group from Lasley Elementary, and a young man, probably 3rd grader, was here with everybody else, and he was dressed up in his little bow tie, and was his day at City Hall. And he started asking me questions in front of all of his classmates, and finally told me that he is about to lose his house and his family is about to be homeless. So that little boy is a very brave young man to share that with all of his classmates and all of this city. And hopefully, I mentioned that his teacher should get in touch with us and maybe we can find them the resources. But that's the reality of the life of many people that are living in our community, and I don't ever want to forget that. And I just want to say that little guy is a hero of mine today for having the honesty to talk about something that's so complicated, and he did it with a smile. So I wish him and his family blessings. Michelle, Mr. Graham, Ms. Hodson. Okay. All right. We will adjourn at 9:30. Thank you to our police agent for hanging out. You got early duty today, so thank you.